Welcome, Ralie. I would like to start out by thanking you for being part of this interview and taking the time to be with us today. I thought maybe we could start by having you introduce yourself and then tell us how you first got involved with ISS USA.
Well, my name is Ralie Deffenbaugh, or my nickname is Ralie. I was the president of Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service for a little bit more than 18 years, from 1991 until 2009. And I first heard of ISS in the early 90s through my relationship, and then became a friendship with Wells Klein. And Wells was the head of one of the refugee resettlement agencies, like LIRS was one of them as well. And at that time, his agency was called ACNS, or the American Council for Nationality Services. And ACNS grew out of a sort of heritage of partnership with different social service agencies, the YMCA network, the international institutes in many cities, and also had a close relationship with ISS. And in fact, ISS was part of ACNS. Well, then in the mid 90s, ACNS both changed its name and moved its headquarters from New York City to Washington, D.C. And that was also around the time when Wells was going to be retiring. And Wells knew that it would not be possible for ACNS to continue operating ISS, given all those changes that ACNS was going through. And so he was looking for another agency that could take on ISS USA. And he thought of LIRS, and I think he thought of it for a number of reasons. Among them, LIRS has a long involvement with children's services. LIRS and the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops were the two national agencies that did resettlement for unaccompanied refugee children in the U.S. And also LIRS had a very strong connection and partnership with Lutheran social ministry organizations around the country. And therefore, the sort of ethos and standards of social work were well known to us at LIRS. And Wells Klein was a very, very dedicated social worker. He really saw his professional identity in that way. And I remember, it was Wells who really taught me about how important case management is. and he was always talking about case management and how we need to bring more of that into the refugee resettlement program and into other parts of our work. So I remember Wells asking me to come over to his office in New York City one day, and he basically laid out the situation of ISS and said that he would be, he'd be very pleased if LRIS would consider taking on ISS. So I went back and then talked a lot about that, especially with my then deputy at LIRS, Jack Griswold, and we, went through it, thought about what would be the pros and cons, and then decided that we should probably do this. That the mission and work of ISS was really important. That it was consistent with the mission of LIRS in terms of helping families, helping children, and so forth. So anyway, the LRIS board agreed, and we took on ISS, and basically LRIS ran ISS USA for 10 years, from 1994 to 2004. And it was, you know, it was not easy. There were challenges. LIRS ended up subsidizing ISS financially in a fairly significant way, and that ended up being, one question that our LIRS board, kept asking was, is this an important use of the LIRS resources? Is this still an important mission, and so forth? But the board, continued to say yes, yes, it was.
Well, when you talked about how LRIS helped to turn around ISS, what was the major force behind that?
I mean, one thing was the repatriation program that the U.S. government ran through the Office of Refugee Resettlement, and it certainly helped that, with LRS having, such a strong partnership relationship with ORR, that they've, felt trust that if they were to turn to ISS and, to help run that repatriation, that would be done in a good way. So I think that helped, and that provided, a bit of more financial stability for ISS. I think, I can't remember for sure if this was a factor much, but as part of the refugee resettlement work, LIRS had a relationship with state refugee coordinators in many of the U.S. States. And oftentimes those state refugee coordinators would be in the state social service agency, which would also be the agency that would be working on cross-border family reunifications and so forth. And I think those contacts and relationships may have helped as well. But I think primarily what LIRS was able to provide was just a stable administration and the sort of financial safety net to keep ISS going during that time.
What would you think would be future areas of interest for ISS?
Well, I guess what I would suggest would be, try to, build on the strengths. And I would see, there are two main strengths of ISS and both USA and the international network. One is the social work expertise and really, bringing that to bear. And the other strength, I think, is just this human compassion that we all have for children, and that, we want the best for children. We don't want children to be separated from their families. We want families to be reunited if possible, and so forth. And to keep telling the story about how through the work of ISS, kids can find their home again, and families can be reunited, and which I think is a very powerful story to tell. So
that's great.
I'm really pleased that that ISS has not only survived but thrived, and I think one of the things I'm glad about for my leadership at LRIS is having been able to help make that possible.
Yeah, well, we really recognize and appreciate that role that you played. And Wells also played a similar role in not just ISS, but in other organizations too. But it's important for us to recognize that the leadership of the organization through years has also been a very, very important piece of why we keep doing this and how we continue to, organize, even when we're facing funding crises and lack of staff or whatever the things that we're facing in the moment. It's the people who care enough about the mission to keep it going that have helped us survive more than anything. And I think that's true of every ISS member across the globe.
Yeah,
our stories are all the same in that regard. So thanks for being part of such a big part of our history.
Oh, for sure. And thanks for taking up contact. It's nice to be able to help celebrate ISS in this way.